What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video, here to talk to you guys today about the Nintendo 3DS. Now this happens to be the Nintendo 3DS XL, so it was a little bit bigger than the standard 3DS, but probably one of my most beloved pieces of tech. Not just because we got a really cool Majora's Mask logo on here, the fact that it's gold, but just it had some phenomenal games on it. But unfortunately, you know, as with a lot of other Nintendo hardware, it was largely forgotten very rapidly. I've seen this across going really back to the GameCube, the Wii, the Wii U. Nintendo just seems to have this unfortunate ability to totally abandon and leave these consoles out to die. And definitely the 3DS, particularly when the XL came out, boy oh boy did we see that happen. In case you don't remember, what really makes this thing great, not just because you have the larger screen, but this variant actually included an analog stick. So you could actually have dual analog. Now, not a lot of games took support of this, unfortunately, and I mean, probably I would say less than a dozen before this console completely stopped and essentially died to make room for ultimately what would go on to become the Nintendo Switch. But during the time that, you know, I really was hot and heavy on this thing, man, did I love it. And phenomenal battery life, the fact that it had 3D that worked really well without glasses, and all of the really cool Street Pass support with all of the add-on games really made it a lot of fun. So why am I talking about a piece of hardware that came out a zillion years ago? Well, one, because it's cool as hell, but really because I've been playing a lot of Bravely Default again. And it's really in preparation for Bravely Default 2, which is going to be coming out a little bit later. There is a free demo out right now on the Nintendo Switch if you are so inclined to check it out. I'm not super hot on it yet. I think there's some work that needs to be done. But it made me realize that I never beat the first one, despite the fact I felt like I got pretty far in it. So I've decided a brand new save, start over, re-enjoy the game, and I've fallen in love with it all over again. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it because I feel like it was one of those games that I wouldn't necessarily say was ahead of its time, but it did some really cool RPG mechanics that you don't typically see much anymore. You know, back in the old days of turn-based RPGs where I get to hit and the enemy gets to hit and we go back and forth, some of those games do seem dated. And that's just unfortunate. It's the way that technology has moved along where everything is now in real time. You've seen things like Final Fantasy, for example, the remake, totally changed that system entirely where it's now much more of a run around and kind of dodge, almost Kingdom Hearts-esque in a sense. But back in the day, really when this console came out, and really this console paying, you know, homage to the old turn-based games, particularly on the Super Nintendo. That's like kind of the golden era of turn-based JRPGs, honestly. This game, you know, kind of paying tribute to that and stylized very similar in that kind of graphic style. You know, that system got very stagnant over time because it was there wasn't a lot of thought to it. You just grinded. That was it. You grinded out entirely. All you had to do was grind, and you'd be fine. You'd go to a dungeon. Oh, it's too hard. Go to the last dungeon. Fight until you get through, and just keep playing that way. And while I'm not gonna lie, Bravely Default does have grinding in it. All RPGs do. That's just kind of the nature, particularly JRPG ones. But the fact that this game allows you to have a Brave and a default system really did change the game. So the name kind of odd, Bravely Default. It sounds like a bad translation, honestly. But the idea is you basically could borrow or bank attacks. So instead of just attacking once on your turn, you could go default, which I'm not going to attack, but you can bank that for a future attack. And essentially what you could ultimately end up doing is stringing together multiple attacks in a row. Essentially just hitting 3 or 4 times in a row. And this is great for burn down on enemies because they can't do anything. They're just like kind of standing there waiting. So if you know an enemy's low on health and they have some sort of enrage timer, or if you know an enemy likes to counter after, you know, when their turn comes on, you bank up attacks and then you basically just blast your offense. Or inversely, you can use it to basically do a recovery period where everybody's just self-healing and preparing for the next wave of attacks. And those are good, particularly in boss battles. Some around the mid-range point. As I mentioned, a lot of bosses do have some sort of a rage time or some sort of mechanic that makes them stronger towards the end of the fight. So it's to your advantage to kind of take your time and get ready. But that system is really, really cool in this game. And unfortunately, we don't really see that much anymore. I'm hopeful that obviously Bravely Default 2 will bring a lot of it back. But it's interesting mechanic in of itself. What makes the original Bravely Default, particularly, again, back to the old 3DS, so interesting was that this game offers a lot of Street Pass support, particularly in how, now, unfortunately, you can't enjoy it now because really nobody's carrying this thing around. But back in its prime, I would always get 10 friends everywhere I'd go. I'd always carry it in my pocket every time I went to the mall, and it was always a hot spot. And I'd just sit there and meet people, and I'd invite them to my Meet Plaza. I think I have, I don't know, couple thousand people that I've met on here, collect puzzle pieces, and it was fun. But particularly to Bravely Default specifically, there is a mechanic where you rebuild a town. The main character's town was destroyed and you're going to rebuild it. And depending on the amount of people you meet, you could assign more workers to it. So it's kind of a time-based game. Keep in mind the 3DS was really one of those consoles where they wanted you to keep pinging it. So a lot of things were timer-based. You know, you do something, come back in 2 or 3 hours, do it again. They wanted you to always kind of have it in your pocket, flip it open, play for a few minutes. I think that was their business model to keep people engaged. Unlike other home consoles where like you go home and you dedicate 2 or 3 hours, they want you to play this 5-10 minutes, close the lid. It had a really, I think, revolutionary standby system, which a lot of mobile devices didn't have at the time. So the ability you could just close the lid, put it away, come back in an hour or whatever. With the Street Pass system, you were able to use workers to build your town faster, which was cool. You could also send skills over to you. So I could send you a skill and say, hey, look, I know you're low level right now, but I got this really cool ability. I'm going to let you use it just this one time. And you can borrow skills to people, which made the game a lot more fun too. Now, that was the first time I played through. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, Bravely Default came out, and I'm looking here on Wikipedia. It came out in October of 2012. So not a lot of people are carrying around 3DSs in the world anymore. Just as, obviously we moved on to the Switch now. And unfortunately, the Street Pass system was largely kind of deleted, which major disappointment in my opinion. But when it did exist, you had those really cool abilities. Now, taking all of that out, Bravely Default still is a phenomenal game by today's standards. The beautiful backgrounds, really drawn, detailed very well, with 3D sprites over on top of it. Really gives you that like Final Fantasy VII vibe where you had these beautiful backgrounds, but you also had, detailed characters. Particularly since this game relies a lot on a job system where you're going to be changing out what your character does. There are different jobs unlock different abilities, which allow you to fight differently. You can mix and match abilities that you've unlocked from jobs as well. So it pays to be diverse. So you can unlock a healing ability, then switch over to a fighting ability and bring the healing ability with you. Really allowed you to much more flexibility in how you made your characters compared to pretty much any other RPG I've played where, characters like you are a mage, you are a fighter, you are a monk or whatever. None of that. This really lets you do whatever you wanted. You had a 4-person party. There's a lot of in-talking between them in between missions, fully voice acted, and all those costumes that you change to depending on your jobs was fully rendered in the game, and all the cutscenes and everything. So you really got a sense of customization and ownership of your characters and of your adventure. And as I said, I didn't beat the story the first time. I'm going to go back and do it now. It's a good story. Honestly, for little bite-sized pieces of text and keeping in mind that, some of the stuff may seem a little far-fetched, like, oh, the crystal's been destroyed and the world ended and monsters came out. You're going to have to take some of those tropes for what they were. But I think looking past that, particularly looking past some of those nonsensical things, the characters have a lot of heart. You're going to identify with them. You're going to get to know them, their hopes, their dreams, their thoughts, their fears. They're going to be put in extraordinary situations. Interesting to see how they rise to the situation. And you're going to be very intimate with this 4-person party throughout your adventure. And I really like that. So I can't say enough good things about it. And largely, I think it was amplified by all the cool things that the 3DS did do. Like I said, really powerful little system for its time. Really, in a sense, kind of ahead of its time. Now, Bravely Default 2 is going to have, from my understanding, nothing to do with this. It's going to have nothing to do with Bravely Second, which a lot of people did not like. It's going to be a brand new adventure with brand new people, brand new time and space. But I think it's worth going back. We have some time before Bravely Default 2 comes out, which I want to say it's coming out, yeah, actually next month, so February. So a little over a month from now. You got plenty of time to go back and blow the dust off your old 3DS and play through this game, because that's what I want to do. I want to beat this before I move on to the other one. But I gotta say, honestly, it's fun. And if you miss that kind of turn-based, that kind of retro, in a sense, timeless art, I think you're gonna find it in this game. So do yourself a favor and check it out. Hopefully you still have a 3DS laying around. The 3D isn't required, obviously. You can turn that on or off. I like it on sometimes. Sometimes it bothers my eye. I turn it off. It depends. But it works really well. And it's great battery life. The console's phenomenal. And who knows, if there is a big excitement or need or warrant, I would love to go back and talk more about some of the great games on this console, because I feel like it's one of the more forgotten consoles. Really in that era when Nintendo was just blowing through consoles at such a rapid rate. Just a very short amount of years, we went from the Wii to the Wii U to the Switch. We had the DS, the 3DS, the 2DS, the 3DS XL, the new 3DS. Like, they were making these things very, very rapidly. But this was kind of the last one. This was like the finale. They didn't really make anything past this. This nothing stronger than this. Like I said, the dual analog stick wasn't really supported. It's unfortunately not even supported in Bravely Default. But yeah, good game, man. Highly, highly recommend it. And I think if you are jonesing for some old school RPG goodness, look no further than this. So with that, closing out this video, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave some comments below. Let me know your thoughts on Bravely Default or the Nintendo handheld scene, because I know we're not going to bring it back, but we can still remember it fondly. With that, I'm out of here. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.